Good evening, folks. And tonight we're going to talk about one thing. Pretty much, Canada. But first, before we talk about Canada, it's mostly about the Revolutionary War and pretty much how it was formed and how the United States could have easily made Canada a state. But first, we're going to talk about its provinces. And when it became a country. It was pretty much 2 years after the Revolutionary War when it mostly became a country. Pretty much we're going to go from west to east when it became a country. Now the French, before we get into that, the French pretty much will own the Quebec part, but they weren't really like they weren't really owned by the French. The French didn't fully own it. The British still owned it, but it wasn't fully owned by the French. So still, we could have easily taken it, but we didn't have the manpower. So here's how it went. In 1867, when Canada finally got its independence from Great Britain, these were the provinces that finally seceded from Great Britain: Ontario, Quebec, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. Then in 1870, 3 years later, Manitoba. In 1871, the far west, the most far western part of Canada, British Columbia, in 1871. 2 years later, Prince Edward Island seceded in 1873. But then, several years later, 2 more provinces went in favor of the Canadians: Alberta and Saskatchewan. That was back in 1905. But then Newfoundland and Labrador pretty much seceded in 1949. Not till then. Shortly after World War II, surprisingly. That's when officially Canada became its own entity. Canada was officially no longer an entity of Great Britain. Pretty much nothing belonged to Great Britain. Nothing in that country was there. Now there was a few little, not just necessarily provinces. That's what those are. Now, let's go on to the other part of this. Alright. Fast forward to the Revolutionary War. Well, at one time, Canada was a part of the United States. We would still, if we hadn't been for the Revolutionary War, we'd probably be a part of Canada right now. Just for your information. We'd be under Canadian rule right now, British rule. We'd be under Canada. We wouldn't have any of our sports or anything like that. Now, on the flip side of that, say we did get our independence. We did get our independence and everything. Now, Great Britain. We're at war right now with Great Britain. We wanted to get Canada as a part of our state. So we invaded Canada. Went up through Canada. There's other small little skirmishes in Canada. On Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, and New Brunswick going on. Small little skirmishes on those areas that were going on. Now, Quebec was the big one that we were talking about. Arnold's expedition was going on. Arnold went up through Maine to get there. He made some stops. He already took Ticonderoga. But then General Richard Montgomery was going to go through Montreal on the way to Quebec to meet up with Benedict Arnold. At the time, he was only a colonel. He didn't get promoted until he attacked there. But then they ran into some issues in Quebec because of manpower. They were going to go side by side around the fort, but they were not aware that they were prepared and waiting on them. And sure enough, the British attacked, killing General Richard Montgomery at one point. Ethan Allen one that led the Vermont attack at the attack at Ticonderoga, was also there. But he was captured. But he surrendered. But then they all left. Then we come to this war. So then they retreated back to the United States. After that battle. Quebec battle over with. If we would have won that battle, we probably would have kept on battling other battles and just kept on going into Canada. And probably would have made Canada a state. At least Quebec. We probably made Quebec a state. Because how are they French? French loved the United States because then Saratoga happened. And that's where John Burgoyne got himself handed down and was surrendered. And that's where Benedict Arnold pretty much was well known for his antics. Didn't want to listen. They called him an insubordinate. But then again, his words were this. Pretty much kind of similar to what Darth Vader said to his one superior. I find your lack of faith disturbing. Pretty much what he said to General Gates, but a little differently. He says, you're finding honor? I'll walk 10 paces and we can have this nice little conversation with weapons drawn. And obviously you have no honor. Something that, and I'll shoot away with honor. Something that you are very much well lacking. So obviously Gates is another reason why, could be another reason why Benedict Arnold defected. There's a lot of conspiracy theories of why Benedict Arnold defected. Nobody really knows why. Not even people back then know why he defected. Nobody really knows why. But we'll get into that moment a little later. Now, as we continue, Benedict Arnold just didn't want to quit. So, what happened? Canada didn't change. The United States did. When those provinces became a part of their country, once they became a country, if it became a state, if Canada officially became a state, including the other parts that are not provinces but are territories of Canada, like the Northwest Territory, the Yukon Territory, and all those other parts of Canada, I can only imagine what it would cost, what that would be. Now, considering I actually did a little research, California has more people than the whole entire country of Canada put together. Now, considering California is a very highly liberal state, and Canada really isn't, well, it's kind of liberal, kind of isn't. I mean, it's kind of split down between the two. Very interesting. Now, Canada is quite interesting. But that's one part of Canada that is pretty much all French, is Quebec. Everybody else, strongly English, except for Quebec. Part French, the rest is all English. But during the War of 1812, similar thing. Except the difference is, it was a strategic victory. Quite some victories were found. Siege of Fort Erie. The Americans came in and attacked Fort Erie and took Fort Erie like nothing even existed. Then the British came for a counter-strike. It was thrown back. They didn't even have a chance to retake the fort. And then the siege of... And then you have the other part of it. The siege of... Then you have other battles in Canada. Plenty of other battles that were up in Canada. Then you have... Then you fast forward all the way to 1846, when the Oregon Territory was found between the British and the Americans. Canada and the United States are right there. That's right along the Washington, up there by Washington and Quebec. Actually, not Washington, Quebec. That would be British Columbia and Alberta. Not British Alberta, but that's British Columbia and Washington. Right there. So the United States drew up a line. James, let me think here. I think that was James Polk. Yeah, James Polk was in charge then. He drew a line, drawing the map with Canada. So, line was drawn. People, they started to fuss about who owns what. The United States owns this part of the land. No, we own this part. Another war almost broke out between the United States and Canada. Nope, not this time. Same up there in Minnesota. Up there by Lake of the Woods County, Minnesota. Part in Canada, the other part in the United States. That county's kind of split right there. The United States arguing over the land. That much seceded back in the United States. That was in 1818. Shortly after the war ended. But quickly the peace was written. But then in 1859, right before the Civil War, the Pig War broke out. But it was a Cold War. No, not the Cold War with nuclear warheads or anything like we did with Russia, aka the Soviet Union. This was a war where two farmers pretty much, well, you know how you have your many neighborly disputes where one neighbor doesn't like what the other neighbor does. It's kind of like that, except the one neighbor had pigs walking on the other neighbor's lot and was eating potatoes. So he didn't like it, so he shot the pig. And the other neighbor was angry because you shot my pig. So he says, well, tell your pigs to stay on your own property. So he said, here's $10. He says, no, I want 100. He says, nah, you're not getting 100. You're not getting a penny from me then. So with that being said, he called the British government up to come in to put a handle on this. So then he calls the American government up to put a handle on this. Two farmers battling it out. But then they get two different governments involved with this. Because he was on the British side, while the American side. 461 American troops to 2,145, I think, British. To the north and to the south. Both harassing each other to the point where we're just waiting for one person to take a shot. Nope. Nobody shot at anybody. When both countries' governments heard about it, they quickly came in and put a stop to it. He said, you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere with this. And sure enough, nobody fired anybody, shot at anybody. The war ended quickly. And sure enough, about a couple years, just under 2 years later, the Civil War broke out. But what would have happened if the Pig War actually did break out? Would we have had a Civil War? Answer is, probably not. The Civil War probably would have waited several years later. We would have driven right through these guys. We had a lot more high-powered weapons than what the British had. Because we were driving all the way up through there. Well, on the other hand, several states already, once Abraham Lincoln was elected, we were already getting ready to go to war. Abraham Lincoln was getting ready to be elected president. If we were in the middle of that war, I'm not sure if he would have put a stop to that war, and we would have gone right into Canada, because a little more land was seceded to the United States. San Juan Island was the name of that island, where this little incident took place at. But San Juan Island pretty much was what sealed the deal, but when the Oregon Territory took place, would have been, if that war would have broke out, we would have had two-phased war. One against Great Britain, one against Mexico, because Mexico would have been going on to the south, and Great Britain to the north. We pretty much would have had our army split up, kind of like how Germany did with Russia to the east, and France, Great Britain, and a whole bunch of other people to the west during World War I and World War II. Well, that was during the Soviet era. That was both during the Soviet and World War I era. We'll talk about World War I and World War II, the difference between World War I and World War II here shortly, on another time. But, if you think about it, that's literally what Canada was like. We literally had plenty of opportunities to make Canada a state if only certain things happened. But none of them did. But, with that being said, I'm out of here. Hit the like bell. Hit the like button. Hit the bell for notifications. And with that being said, like, subscribe. And I'm out of here. Peace.